This week on the Classic Pay-Per-View Review, we are going back to TNA, back to the world of total nonstop action for a show that took place 19 years ago on the day this video is being released. It's time for Hard Justice 2006 from August 13th at the Impact Zone in Orlando, Florida. This show was nominated by Stephen Pegg over at patreon.com/wrestlingwithregret. I'm really excited to watch this show. I know that 06, 07 is widely considered to be kind of the peak TNA, and I've certainly, dipped my toe into that a little bit over the last few years, but it's good to get back into it now. This is the second ever Hard Justice event, and it's very appropriate since I recently covered Christian's run in WWE. Christian Cage will have a very pivotal role in tonight's show, but we will get to that in a little bit. Let's start with the open of the show, this very crazy opening hype package produced by David Sahadi, who worked for the WWF for many years and also for TNA. And the more I think about it, wow, I think that his work probably influenced me as an editor, as a producer of content in more ways than I probably realized for a long time, because his quick cuts and his dramatic filming style and editing style, it was really cool to kind of look at that and utilize some of that stuff in my own work when I was younger, making hype packages and making entrance videos for people and stuff. So yeah, I think Sahadi's probably one of the most influential people in wrestling when you think about it, for all of the stuff that he did in both companies. But this is really unhinged. Watching this, I'm like, whoa, this is really intense stuff. You got all this spooky imagery, the quick cuts and the creepy girl in the Sting mask, and you got the TNA narrator talking about good versus evil and the duality of man, while you hear the creepy girl underneath going, "I'm scared, it's dark, he's lost his way." But then they put this big fucking dead giveaway for the main event in the end of this hype package, where the narrator says, "When a warrior of light attempts to extinguish the darkness, he becomes seduced by it. He becomes the hated." That really sounds like a hint of what's going to happen tonight. And then at one point, we get a Martin Luther King Jr. impersonator.
For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities.
In your opening matchup, former Team Canada members clash as Johnny Devine takes on Eric Young. It was a little while ago when the head of operations, Jim Cornette, forced Team Canada to disband. And so now all the different members are kind of scattered about, going their own way. And Devine has joined Paparazzi Productions, more on them in a little bit. And then meanwhile, Eric has really gotten into this plucky, dumb underdog storyline where he seems to be constantly at risk of losing his job, to the point where there is a "Don't Fire Eric" campaign. And I think he's always been very entertaining in this role. He was told the week before at Impact by Jim Cornette not to lose this one if he wants to keep his job. And for Eric, when he makes his entrance, he comes out with this gaggle of supporters. It kind of reminded me a little of the Rosebuds or the Little Juicers in WCW. But it was this thing where he's coming out and there's supposed to be a train of people behind him. But the way they do it, it's Eric goes first guy behind him goes, and then the cameraman follows those two guys. But then you realize there's no one behind them, because when the camera cuts to the wide shot, they just booked it and abandoned the rest of the line of people. And they just gotta catch up. So it's one dude doing this whole thing just behind Eric Young on his own lonesome. He was the head of his own parade. It was beautiful. And then the rest of them catch up and they do the lineup thing. I'm the Eric doing the whole finger pointing, the finger point at people. Devine gets on the mic saying Eric shouldn't suck up to these people, and he says that Eric is always the guy who chokes in big situations, and tonight he's getting fired. I point? No, I poke. EY gives it back, and then he hugs it out. That crazy scamp. Devine is back on the attack, driving tons of consecutive knees to the dome. There are a lot of, pro-Eric, anti-Devine chants happening. And as these chants are going, I'm like, wait a minute, do I hear a fire extinguisher?
Johnny Devine is showing Eric Young. He's not looking at him as a teammate at all.
You make a great point. Bringing off the ropes. Wow, gonna go for the cover. Here's one.
Oh, very close for a pin right.
Well, we're in a fog. This is live TV, ladies and gentlemen.
Holy shit, the Impact Zone is now covered in a fire extinguisher fog as some pyro set off a burlap sack that was up in the rafters. Which begs a very important question. Why? Who? Who the fuck puts burlap anywhere in the vicinity of pyrotechnics? So somehow the match is continuing throughout all this as the fans chant, "You can't see us." EY hitting a beautiful standing powerbomb, a big discus clothesline, and the flying elbow drop. Devine tries to win dirty at one point, trying to use the referee as a brace. Eventually, Eric hits his big wheelbarrow neckbreaker. You can see the dust from the fire extinguisher bouncing off the canvas on impact, and EY wins. Then out of nowhere, a wild Earl Hebner appears to choke the life out of referee Slick Johnson. He was recently fired by Jim Cornette after the events of Slammiversary when he got involved in the King of the Mountain match, pushing a ladder over while he was the ref. And so he is currently in this kind of fired phase. He's in disheveled street clothes, looks to be covered in dirt as he's being held back. Larry Zbyszko of the championship committee wearing his awful wig as he tries to break it up. Hebner screams that Slick cost him his job, and he goes, "If I go down, you go down, and Jarrett goes with me." And Zbyszko's ushering him off as, that's going to be a bit more of a mystery for later on. I'm going to give this match 2 stars out of 5. I think the match was okay. I loved how rabid the Impact Zone is for Eric Young. I like that shtick a lot. If not for the fire, I think this match would have been a little more forgettable, sure, but it was, that's a hell of a way to open the show, though. I mean, that's pretty unprecedented. I can't think of too many shows that have incidences like that across the board for anyone. We see a recap of Jeff Jarrett with Scott Steiner and Sting with Christian Cage arriving at the arena for the big main event. Up next, 4 teams are going to vie for the #1 contendership for the NWA Tag Team titles. But first, we have to kill a shitload of time because of all the fire extinguisher stuff everywhere, and eventually they have to full-on evacuate the building by order of the fire marshal. This is a live pay-per-view, and they got to dump everyone out to clean all this stuff, and they have a window of satellite time. Now look, I have history, I have experience with producing live television, not nearly to the scale of TNA or whatever, but I can say from like that kind of experience, like technical issues, something that holds you up and prevents you from just like doing the stuff you've stacked and produced, that is maddening. I would have torn my hair out if I were part of this production crew and having to scramble and figure out how are we going to recover from this? How long is it going to take? What do we have to cut? And it's nuts. It's crazy that the pay-per-view comes to a complete ass-grinding halt just after match 1. And this goes on for about a half an hour is how long this delay is. They do their best to try and stretch and fill the time up. They have a lot of hype packages to take time with. They just re-aired the entire multi-part Sting, like story of Sting and Jeff Jarrett packages that they ran like on the Go Home episode of Impact. They had, more packages to show. They did the hype package for the tag team 4-way match. So they're just like trying to dump as much stuff as they can as they try and figure out what is happening here. We cut to TNA and Don West out in the parking lot where they have evacuated and everything. This is madness. But once they're out in the back doing their live hit, it doesn't take much longer for the evacuation to be lifted and the fans start filing in. So while that's happening, let's kill some more time by having some wrestlers come along and start cutting promos. Hey, Monty Brown, you want to just get in front of the mic and kill it for a few minutes?
Hey, Joe, why you running around with that cheeseburger in your hand, looking so fly? It's the war that I'll bring to the so-called war machine, Rhino. Half hippo, half elephant, hippofit.
Honestly, after that promo, I was like, give Monty Brown the motherfucking belt. What are you doing, TNA? How? Like, even as someone who didn't follow TNA, I knew that, like, wow, they're really missing the ball on Monty Brown. Like, I don't know how they did that. We see more of the fans filing in. Then in comes Shane Douglas and the Naturals to cut an interview. Shane recently joined up with Chase Stevens and Andy Douglas, taking them under his wing and trying to motivate them to, get back in title contention. And so Shane is cutting a very fiery promo here as their manager, saying, "This is just like the adversity that I've dealt with for 25 years. Then he starts putting over President Bush for fighting the war on terror that fell into his lap. Okay. And then he talks about how he's always risen to the challenge. And he's asking the guys, is the fire in that building putting out the fire in your chests? And man, I think everyone was given a directive on this show. Okay, when you're cutting a live promo, say something about the fire. I'm pretty sure they were going to punish someone for not mentioning it because everyone mentions the fire in these promos. But I thought it was a great promo from Shane Douglas here. I thought he did a good job, hyping up his boys. It's just too bad this match is going to be cut for time. Elsewhere, we see Jeremy Borash with Alex Shelley of Paparazzi Productions. Kevin Nash is apparently unable to compete in the X Division #1 contendership match, and Shelley says if there were ever a saddest moment in TNA history countdown, this would surely be at the top of that list. He explains that Nash allegedly injured his neck attempting to practice his 840 springboard splash that he's been practicing. And then suddenly you see in wheels, Kevin Nash in a neck brace, in a wheelchair as Johnny Devine is pushing him. And Nash says, "This is the darkest day of my life, man." And he's going to give Alex his full moral support, tells him to go to war, and then he bravely removes his neck brace and gives Alex some dog tags. And I don't know how often I'll get a chance to talk about it. I'd like to go back and just focus on like the run of Kevin Nash and the Paparazzi Productions, because like literally everything I've seen of this group is straight up comedy gold. I love Kevin Nash's humor has always been really solid. I've always enjoyed his delivery on things. And I know he had that negative perception of like, oh, the vanilla midgets and not wanting to work with smaller guys and everything. But I think this stuff that he did with guys like, Lethal and Shelley and Johnny Devine and all that, it's brilliant stuff. I think that was really strong. It went a long way, I think, in rebuilding kind of Nash's perception amongst fans. And with that, Hard Justice is officially back on. The evacuation's lifted, the fans are filed back in, and everyone's ready for our next matchup. It's a #1 contendership bout for the X Division title, and you see Alex Shelley in for Kevin Nash taking on Chris Sabin. It's before they're the Guns. Nash shows up in the wheelchair at ringside. Come on, I've seen this scene before. He has the big fake cast on. Good quick action to start things off. I love the springboard dropkick by Sabin. At one point, Sabin gets Alex in this like powerbomb position and he mocks Nash by like doing the wolf pack thing, but the noise he makes is just really weird.
In particular, all three of these men.
Athai means paparazzi. Shelley is hip tossed out of the ring. Sabin follows up with a nice dive. Out of the corner, Shelley hits a super reverse atomic drop and locks in the Border City stretch, but Sabin grabs the ropes. Sabin with a great hesitation dropkick in the ropes. He seems to almost have it won, but Shelley just barely kicks out in time. That was super close. Johnny Devine gets on the apron to distract the referee. Then we see Kevin Nash getting up from the wheelchair, sliding a chair into the ring, but it backfires and Sabin hits the cradle shock to win. I'm going to give it 2.5 stars out of 5. Wow, what a shock. Another Kevin Nash bait and switch on a pay-per-view where he suddenly isn't in shape to compete in the match he's booked for. Possibly because he's booked to lose. That was a rumor going around at the time that he, faked the injury. He said he hurt his neck, moving furniture, which is a tried and true reason for that. I mean, I don't think it's the pot brownies this time because he was there and seemed fairly, lucid and with it. But, I think the replacement, Shelley versus Sabin, was still good. I think that, they had some good action, and it's funny to see them be, fighting each other here when not too long from now they are going to become, one of the best tag teams ever. Backstage, JB is with Sinmin, Father James Mitchell, and the monster Abyss. He asks James if Brother Runt has a fighting chance against Abyss, and Mitchell asks, does a small yapping chihuahua have a fighting chance against a pit bull? He calls Runt a one-man infestation and that he should have listened to his brothers to lay low. And he compares this to Jack and the Beanstalk and David and Goliath. And he says, just like your chances of beating Abyss, it's a fairy tale, and you're going to live miserably ever after. I'm kind of paraphrasing, but it was a great line, great promo from Mitchell here, and then Abyss just screams afterward. Then we go to that match as Abyss takes on Brother Runt. After Victory Road, Team 3D telling Runt to lay low and stay out of trouble while they're gone doing whatever, so the first thing he does is pick a fight with Abyss. Okay. They mentioned Brother Runt has taken on a bit of a new Taxi Driver-inspired look. The match begins. Runt's trying to run around Abyss. He tries some headbutts, a cross body, nothing's doing. Then Abyss just picks him up and hucks him into at least the 4th row. Holy shit. But he gets caught by some people and they just crowd surf him back into ringside. Runt hits the acid drop on Abyss onto the steel barricade. That was cool. We see Raven looking on in the distance. Wonder what he's thinking. Brother Runt starts to bring chairs in the ring, but it works against him. Runt Runt thrown into the corner chair, and he wears it like a collar. In the corner, Runt grabs a steel chain and he dinks Abyss with it, hits the acid drop again in the ring this time, still not enough. At one point, the referee is laid out and Mitchell produces the bag of thumbtacks. That's Abyss's trademark. And so Abyss dumps all the tacks out onto the mat and he's shoving Brother Runt's face and head into the tacks. It looks brutal. It looks absolutely vicious, but it's kind of disappointing because when Spike looks up, only 1 or 2 tacks maybe stuck to his face. That's a little disappointing. Oh, Jesus, fuck, he just stomped his fucking head in. But Runt wakes up from that and starts to fight back, but that doesn't last very long. A face-first bump into the tacks, followed by the black hole slam. The referee wakes back up and makes the count for Abyss to win, and Raven poses. I'm gonna give it 3 stars out of 5. I think that Spike Dudley working with big dudes is one of the most satisfying things to watch for me on a visceral level. It's like, ooh, that whole thing with the head stomp, that really got me. But man, just the brave performance by Runt, getting thrown hither and yon, taking some of the most ridiculous bumps. I mean, that match had me feeling something for sure, so I gotta give it a good rating. JB is back in the promo zone with Rhino talking about the big Falls Count Anywhere triple threat. Rhino saying, moments ago, everyone was running around going crazy, but not him because he was born crazy. And he says he was looking for Samoa Joe so he could knock his teeth down his throat. And he was looking for Monty Brown so he could rape his face with his fist. Jesus, this is like Black Tar ECW era Rhino coming out with this promo. We go to that Falls Count Anywhere match now. It's Rhino taking on Monty Brown and Samoa Joe. So a few weeks ago, Rhino went on TV with his ECW championship belt in a big red bag. I mentioned this actually in one of my recent countdowns about TNA taking shots at WWE because the ECW brand had just been restarted. Rhino says that he was made an offer to join the company, and so on Impact, he makes this very symbolic gesture where he takes the ECW title and he puts it in a big can and sets it on fire, and he wants to make an extreme challenge to anyone, for hard justice. And eventually, Samoa Joe answers the challenge, and they're saying, oh, it's gonna be machine versus machine. And then, just because, I guess, Monty Brown gets kind of involved in their business, and wouldn't you know it, it turns into a triple threat. And the build for this has been great. Just 3 big guys beating the hell out of each other, breaking shit. It's classic stuff. I am so ready for this matchup. Monty Brown wearing long tights under his short tights. Interesting look. The match starts out with fists flying and even a flying Rhino, but then in flies the unbeaten Samoa Joe. Now Monty has produced a trash can and gets to work. Joe grabs it from him and just punts it into his face. I love that. Rhino throwing Joe into the barricade, dinks him with a little cooking tray. They're fighting into the crowd, and then we get this environmental damage as Joe breaks part of the set with the boot. It's just crazy. The wood's breaking. They're using it as weapons. In flies Monty Brown over the barricade. Whee! More fighting in the crowd, and by now that wall is just broken apart. They're climbing the stairs. Oh, I feel bad for this little kid here. He probably doesn't want to be there. It's all loud and on fire and shit. We see a crutch being used. We see an umbrella. There's some woman who's on her phone, oblivious to all this. There's flying chairs, flying trash can lids, non-stop mayhem. They're fighting on the ramp now. Monty with this double underhook suplex to Rhino. And that was a cool move. But even cooler than that was the referee coming in with a big slide to make that count. That was awesome. Back in the ring, Rhino with a spine buster to Joe on the chair. In the corner, Joe with a damn top rope sunset flip powerbomb to Rhino on it. Monty Brown re-enters the chat. He pulls a table out from under the ring. You can still see some of that fire extinguisher dust. Monty and Joe fight on the stage area. Rhino comes back. He's swinging like a madman. Now he is the one setting up some tables. Rhino goes for a gore. Monty sidesteps, and Rhino just goes whoop off and through those tables and that wall. Holy shit. Then Joe with the STO off the ramp through another table. Joe wins. He grabs the mic after the bell and he says he came here looking for a fight, and whether this son of a bitch burns down or not, I got one, and damn it, we can do it all over again. 5 stars out of 5. This is a fantastic match. I've said it before. I was ready for this. I love this kind of environment, and I think all 3 guys just blew all expectations away. It was so fun. and just what this show needed to really kick the ass of the fan base and get them loud again. This was fantastic. No notes. Backstage, JB is with Larry Zbyszko. I forgot to mention earlier, the reason he's wearing that ridiculous wig is because he lost a hair versus hair match to Raven at Victory Road, and I think it's so funny, and I don't know if this is intentional or not, but the wig makes Zbyszko look so much like Eric Bischoff when he was the Raw GM around this time. So he says poor Earl Hebner has lost his mind, but doesn't know why he would jump out and attack Slick Johnson like that. And again, he denies there's any kind of conspiracy happening or any involvement that Zbyszko might have had at Slammiversary. And JB asks, well, why did you and Hebner, why were you the first ones to leave when that match ended? He says, because there was debris flying around and I had to avoid it and everything. Then suddenly in comes Slick Johnson, who's complaining about Hebner attacking him from earlier. And he says, he and Hebner and Jarrett, they got something going on. This is not right. And Zbyszko shuts it down right away and calls him a Jiminy Cricket pest bastard, which is a great diss. And he says, you're the one who brought the whole situation because you wanted to be the senior official in TNA, and you suck, and I'm going to make Jim Cornette fire you. So that was a great delivery. I think Zbyszko just getting exasperated and angry is one of my favorite things about him in TNA. He's always feeling like that every time I see him, it seems. So yeah, they're building more and they're planting more seeds for this big overarching storyline about the Planet Jarrett conspiracy, basically. So, we'll get there, I'm sure, eventually. Up next, Gail Kim taking on the newcomer Sirelda. Now, Sirelda actually has the distinction of being the first female winner of the TNA Gut Check Challenge, which took place earlier in the year. She came from Canada, and so she was chosen, recruited by AJ Styles and Christopher Daniels in storyline to help be their neutralizer to combat Gail Kim when she was helping out America's Most Wanted in their war for the tag titles. And now comes this grudge match. Sirelda makes her entrance. She almost trips her way down the ramp, and I swear she's getting a negative reaction. I don't mean booing, I mean the absence of sound. There's no reaction to Sirelda when she makes her way to the ring. And man, she is not good in this matchup. It's I don't want to be mean about it, but she's just very green, very inexperienced, and really has no business being in a match at this point on pay-per-view. Gail Kim, God bless her, she's trying her best, she's very experienced, but even she has her limits in this matchup here. Sirelda very stiff in the ring as Gail tries to work her over. Then we get She's a Man chants from the crowd, which is super classy as always, and that fucking sucked. Kim takes over, she locks in the tarantula briefly, goes for a top rope cross body, but Sirelda moves. She picks her up for a front slam, and I've never seen 3 camera cuts for a single slam before. Sirelda putting Gail on her shoulders, but Kim fights back and gets into the corner, hits a blockbuster, and gets the win. This one's going to get 0 stars out of 5 for me. Again, I think that Sirelda had an impossible task ahead of her, being as green as she was, dealing with, honestly, a shitty crowd, with the She's a Man chants that went throughout the matchup. I felt bad for her, honestly. And again, Gail Kim tried her best, but there's only so much you can do, sadly. We got JB in the promo zone. Let's bring in Big Papa Pump Scott Steiner, who's the corner man for Jeff Jarrett tonight. JB says, hey, Jeff Jarrett said that if he loses the title tonight, he will leave TNA. Would you follow his lead? And Steiner says, Jeremy, our track record speaks for itself. Jeff and I have always come out on top. Sting, you made a fatal mistake when you picked Christian Cage as your partner. Jeff and I thought he'd pick the Ultimate Warrior, maybe Lex Luger or even Goldberg, but he picked Christian Cage. And then he goes on, and I realize this is the famous Highly Educated University promo. This is where he says, I come from a highly educated university, so I'm gonna have to dumb myself down when talking to these white trash rednecks. And he's brilliant. It's very funny. And then he talks about comparing, himself to the Homo sapiens, I think is the word he used.
I am Senshi. At hard justice, everyone will experience the way of the warrior.
It's the X Division Championship match, as Senshi, the former Low-Ki, defends against Petey Williams and Jay Lethal. Senshi has been back in TNA for a few months now. He left a few years prior when he was working as Low-Ki, came back at Lockdown as Christopher Daniels' mystery opponent, and for the last 2 months he has been the X Division champion. And so they're calling this the rebirth of the X Division on display, with Senshi here defending against, it was initially going to be just he and Petey Williams. Petey won a 5-person elimination match on Impact to earn the #1 contendership, which included Jay Lethal. But then the following week, Lethal had an NWA title match with Jeff Jarrett on TV, and according to the story, Jim Cornette was so impressed by that performance, he was inserted into the title match that he didn't earn in the match that Petey's in. That's just some fucked up logic. You can see Williams is his own man now in a post-Team Canada World looking to regain that title. Early on, big slingshot by Petey to the outside. Do I hear a spring noise?
Williams hit the spin kick after leaping.
Big old cartwheel flip-de-doo to the outside by Senshi. Back in the ring, he hits a big rolling kick right to Williams, who responds with a drop kick to the leg. Lethal going for a moonsault, but gets none of it. We see some impressive strikes by Senshi, some nice three-man sequences. Poor 20-year-old Jay Lethal taking quite the beating for a while. Senshi going up for the Warrior's way, but Lethal follows him up there. Senshi jumps off of Jay's knees towards Sabin after that. I thought that was pretty cool. Jay comes off the top, hits them both with a drop kick. Now he's going on a nice run of his own. I loved seeing Petey getting pushed off a roll-up and land right into another roll-up by Lethal. That was really cool. Williams with a sharpshooter. Senshi does something, then throws the back of his leg at Petey's head. Lethal with a dive, but nobody in the pool. Canadian Destroyer on Lethal, but Senshi shoves Williams out of the way and pins to win. Wow, what a noble warrior. I give it 3.5 stars out of 5. I thought it was a really entertaining matchup. I thought that there were some really cool like three-man sequences I hadn't noticed before that were done really well. It's too bad that the finish to the match was like one of the most unoriginal, tired, and overplayed finishes like in the history of multi-man matches. I actually kind of wish they had a little more time. I think if they had a few more minutes, could have been even better. JB in the PZ with LAX. Homicide and Hernandez challenging AJ Styles and Christopher Daniels for the tag belts. Conan accusing the champs of being handpicked and afforded luxuries and privileges like this white boy gringo nation that we can only dream about. We're going to take what's ours because you put us in this predicament. He says tonight we're going to get back at the gringos who've done terrible things to our nation. And I guess winning the NWA tag titles is a way to go about getting back at them. Then we get this hype package for the match immediately following where Conan says a lot of the same stuff he just said. For the NWA World Tag Titles, Styles and Daniels defend against LAX. Former rivals turned partners, AJ and Christopher won the belts after a feud with America's Most Wanted. Then after Victory Road, they issued an open challenge for the next contenders. Conan in the LAX base was complaining that they were ducking him, so then they walked the contract over to LAX, but the trap is set. The champs are beaten up, Daniels is bloodied, AJ is absolutely crushed with the Gringo Killer. Brutal looking move. They sign the contract in Daniels' blood. Hell yeah, that's intense. And then we go to Moody Jack, LAX's personal ring announcer, who warns the Gringos that the following will be in Spanish, so you'd better learn it. God, I really missed out on LAX. I feel that like watching these guys, like, man, what a great angle. It feels like kind of a new spin on kind of like early Nation of Domination, but just the presentation, the fact they have this whole like sectioned off area, like this is our secret club, you know, you're not allowed here, and like they're fighting back, they're taking back. What a cool entrance they have, just the production behind it. I think it's a really neat gimmick. The match begins. Daniels is all over Hernandez at the beginning. We get Styles begging for the tag to wrestle Homicide. He wants a piece of him after taking that Gringo Killer. A little bit later, Daniels comes off the top and Hernandez can't catch him for the spot they seem to be doing. What kind of a base is he? Champs work over Homicide for a little bit. Styles fighting off both opponents at once. Good Lord, the way he comes down on that neck breaker though. They start working over AJ, attacking that neck. Homicide with an insane looking cannonball dive to the outside onto Styles. AJ blocks a suplex to drop Homicide over the top, makes the dramatic hot tag to Daniels. The Fallen Angel is a flying machine. He's all over the place. Hernandez with a huge dive, taking out both Daniels and his own guy. AJ with a springboard shooting star press as Mike Tenay makes a noise.
It isn't all about
LAX with a double team bulldog to Daniels. Styles barely makes a save. We get a Tower of Doom, and man, Hernandez cannot stop beating up his own partner in this matchup. Lots of legal man syndrome at this point in the match. We're all just in there now. More chaos in the ring. K-Dog gets a shot in on AJ on the apron. We almost get stereo finishers by LAX, but AJ slips out of the Gringo Killer. He helps save Daniels from the border toss. A high-low on Hernandez for the win. I give it 4 stars out of 5. I thought this was a great tag team match. I love the story they were telling and how AJ and his neck was becoming a liability. And really, the champions, in my opinion, they made this matchup. They really made it shine. And I think that these two teams work really well together. Styles and Daniels working with Hernandez, that dichotomy of big and little, I think that works really well. And it's a really fun match. Boy, don't Don and Mike look tired at this point, folks. DW looks like he's just about done. It's a long night for them. Then we're back to JB interviewing Christian Cage. He's going to accompany Sting to the ring for the main event. Christian asks if Jarrett set the building on fire to get out of this match, but he says that Jarrett's going nowhere. He says to Scott Steiner, "I got 3 words for you, Scotty. Buy a freaking vowel." He says he's not sweating Scotty nor Jarrett, and he says tonight is the night that I am sure that Sting becomes the NWA World Champion. It's for his family, for the wrestlers, but more importantly, for me. Translation, he's definitely betraying Sting tonight. Then they replay the Sting-Jarrett stuff again, and then we go to our main event for the NWA World's Heavyweight Championship as Jeff Jarrett, the King of the Mountain, defends against the man called Sting. So last month at Victory Road, Sting won a 4-man match to become the #1 contender. And this was after the champ, Jeff Jarrett, snuck into the match as a cameraman and then sprayed gasoline into the eyes of the Stinger, blinding him and keeping him out of the match. But then Sting came back, made a valiant recovery, and would end up winning. It's been part of this massive 8-month journey for the Stinger since he first arrived in TNA, teaming with Christian Cage, and then immediately issuing a retirement after that. And then, of course, Jarrett wasn't happy with that, and he spent months, pursuing and stalking Sting, going after his family, nothing too big. But it's gotten personal now, and Sting has been on the warpath ever since. And he says he wants to perform surgery and remove the cancer that is Jeff Jarrett with no anesthetic. And Jarrett says he's got Scott Steiner in his corner, so Sting has selected Christian Cage, who is definitely going to betray him. And I know Sting and Jarrett are both, they're both great wrestlers. They're both, esteemed members of their field at this point. I get that. But I also thinking, why is it in 2006 we are looking at this WCW World Wrestling All-Stars main event and calling this the new face of professional wrestling? We have 3 referees out here for the intros. Sure, it would be nice if they stuck around for the match since 2 guys are outside. Jarrett powders early, but Sting is in pursuit, fighting near the announce table. He hits Jarrett with a fan. They fight on the outside, going up the stairs amongst the fans. Who brought a towel to the wrestling show, and why did Sting think to use it as a weapon? That was so funny. Sting throwing Jarrett right next to the poster with his big face on it. Back in the ring, Sting goes up top, but Scott Steiner thwacks him in the leg with a chair. Steiner hitting a suplex on Cage on the outside. TNA goes, "Ah!" and Steiner does push-ups. Jarrett works the leg, slapping on that figure 4, but Sting eventually gets to the ropes. Sting missing his splash, but he counters the stroke into a reverse DDT. Scott Steiner pulling the referee out of the ring. Christian Cage fighting back. Steiner brings the title belt into the ring. The referee's distracted. Things turn around, and Sting decks Jarrett with the belt. Referee still out of position. Steiner hits Sting in the back with a chair, but he falls and headbutts Jarrett in the dick. That was amazing. Christian and Steiner now both in the ring, and they has fight. Christian grabs a chair. It totally looks like he's going to betray Sting, but he actually dinks Jarrett instead. This time, Rudy Charles ejects Christian and then Steiner as well. Jarrett putting Sting in the Scorpion Deathlock, but Sting powers out and hymns up. Now he puts on the Deathlock as Jarrett grabs the ropes. The Stinger splash, and wow, didn't see that ref bump coming. Low blow followed by the stroke. Steiner returns with the acoustic equalizer. They're about to go for a Super El Kabong, but Christian makes the save with Sting's bat. He grabs the guitar, tells Sting to go up to the top rope. Sting flies, and sure enough, Christian with a ridiculous El Kabong just going wham, swinging that thing like a baseball bat right into his face. Who could have ever foreseen this? Jarrett with the slow cover, the referee with a count. Jarrett wins and retains. Why, Christian, why? I'm going to give it 2 stars out of 5. This matchup is just your classic Jeff Jarrett clusterfuck. Title match, whether it was a WCW or TNA, is the referee bumps, the interferences, and all that. And then, of course, we get this incredibly predictable, swerve, this heel turn by Christian Cage, who, even though, again, I am largely ignorant to TNA history, but even I could see this coming. And it wasn't even well booked. There were a couple of times where Christian was actively very close to costing Jarrett the title, and then at the end, he decides to swerve Sting. Why? And oddly enough, this would not directly lead to a Sting-Christian Cage feud, from my recollection. Cage would end up feuding with Rhino immediately after this. And then Sting would go on to actually win the NWA Championship from Jeff Jarrett in a title versus career match 2 months later at Bound for Glory. My final grade for TNA Hard Justice 2006 is a C+. There are a couple of really fun matches worth rewatching. I think the three-way Falls Count Anywhere match and Abyss Brother Runt and the tag title match were my three personal favorites in this one. But there are a lot of matches on this show that can be skipped that frankly didn't belong on this show. I think that the fire incident, it did completely derail, the show for a while. But I give credit to everyone involved for how they were able to bounce back and recover from that. I think that's a harrowing situation to deal with that on live pay-per-view. So I got to give them all the credit in the world for how they bounced back from that. And the fact that only one match ended up getting cut as a result, that's very impressive. It could have been a whole lot worse. But what did you think of Hard Justice 06? And how about this review? Let me know in the comments section below. Be sure to give the video a thumbs up if you like it, subscribe to Wrestling with Regret, hit that bell icon for all the notifications. Next time on the Classic Review, we are going back to WWE, back to the year 2007. The Great American Bash has just wrapped up, and now we are hurtling toward the biggest party of the summer. I'm talking about SummerSlam 07. But until then, I'm Brian Zane, and I'll see you next time.